Welcome back to another video, and today we got our Week 1 College Basketball Power 40 rankings. It's been long awaited, but it's finally here. The college basketball season starts today. By the time this is uploaded, there have probably been games that have already started. Yeah, it's a very exciting time to be a college basketball fan, as always. And yeah, this was one of our most popular video series last year. So yeah, it's good to be back. We've done all five of the Power Five conferences in college basketball. We've previewed every single one, predicted how the standings will shape out in those conferences, and talked each about every team. So make sure you go check those out because this video is not going to be as in depth as those because we kind of want to see how all the teams compare to each other and not necessarily do a deep dive into their teams. Now I'll do a little bit here and there to justify the rankings. Real quick before we get started, make sure you subscribe if you're new. Turn on the noties to make sure you don't miss when we post. Not only do we do college basketballs every Monday, we got college football top 25 videos coming out every Tuesday. NFL weekly picks every Wednesday, NBA videos every Thursday, and we also do MLB content. So if any of that interests you, make sure you go down there, hit that subscribe button if you are new. But we will just jump right into our top 40. So getting on into our little screen we got here. There it is. So yeah, we got our top 40 teams. We're gonna reveal them, starting with number 40, going all the way up to number one. So let's start off with our number 40 team. It's gonna be San Diego State. When looking at the Aztecs, yes, they lose a lot. They lose Jaden Ledee, Lamont Butler, Micah Parrish, a lot of the guys who really really just had most of their production from last year. But I feel like they deserve this number 40 spot. The Aztecs have been a staple here in March Madness. It feels like the past five-ish years. So, coaching-wise, they're very good. They got the culture to do it. I think they deserve to be in the top 40 now. I do have them near the bottom because, yes, I do have some question marks about the roster. The best returnee is Reese Waters, who averaged 9.6 points a game last year. But to be fair, nobody had Jaden Ledee as anything special going into last year, and he became top five player in the country, in my opinion. So now they do bring in some transfers, yes, but I don't know. I do expect their defense to still be very good as always, but I do kind of want to wait and see before I get them up higher into the rankings. Number 39, I have Miami. We'll see this a lot in these rankings where I'll have a lot of teams that I feel like that are in the same conference that I feel like are very close together, kind of just grouped up, and that's what we're gonna see here. I don't want to reveal them yet, but just a little disclaimer. But Miami, I have at 39. They bring back Nigel Pack. They bring back Matthew Cleveland. So I think that will help. They did lose a lot, but I mean, I don't know. I feel like Jaleel Bethia coming in. Uh, Miami was expected to be very good last year. I just I don't know if I see them having another losing year. I mean, they were 15 and 17 last year. Can I really see that happening again? I don't know. Maybe this is a little high as of right now, but I am pretty confident that Miami will potentially be a tournament team this year. I can't see them losing out on the tournament again. I mean, they were projected to be a top three ACC team last year. I think I had them maybe second in my predictions last year. Don't quote me on that, but like they just fell completely off the face of the earth. So I do expect them to be a whole lot more improved this season. Number 38, Pitt. Like I said, it's going to be there's one more ACC team I have ahead of Pitt, but like I said, I just have a lot of these same conference teams kind of grouped up. But I have Pitt at 38. I am very high on Pitt. Um, last year they got hot. They finished 10-3. They just missed out on the tournament. I mean, they probably should have gotten in. At least in my opinion, I remember I was pretty upset about that. But I feel like they should get into the tournament this year. I mean, they bring back a lot of their guys from last year who finished off the season hot, finished 22 and 11, which usually is good enough to get you in. But just came up short last year. I think they do get over the hump and get in this year and are a pretty interesting team to look at. Clemson at 37. Now, if PJ Hall came back, Clemson would probably be a top 20-ish team. But he doesn't, so Clemson is going to be losing their best player. But besides him, I mean, they bring back pretty much the rest of their team. So I am still confident that Clemson should be a tournament team. I mean, Clemson was they did make the Elite Eight last year, led by PJ Hall, obviously. But like an Elite Eight team, I know they lose their best player, but I still do think they're going to be a good team. They bring back Chase Hunter. Um, I think they should be a tournament team once again. Number 36, I have the Spartans now. You could say I'm a little bit lower on the Spartans, and I really am for most people. Um, Now, honestly, I feel like the only reason people have the Spartans higher is because Izzo, and you gotta respect them. But like again, I mean, last year they had Tyson Walker, AJ Hogard. Um, I mean, they had those two guys, and they just couldn't really do anything. I mean, they finished 20 and 15. I know they got in as like a 9 seed or whatever, but it was a pretty disappointing year from what we had seen, at least in the previous year and the expectations going into last year. Um, but like when you look at this roster, they lose their two best players off a team that barely won 20 games last year. I know they were top 20 in KenPom last year, which is pretty impressive, only winning just only being 5 games over 500. But I don't know. I do respect Izzo, so I have to keep him in the top 40. But honestly, I mean, I in my Big Ten season preview, I was way lower on them just because of the roster. I mean, the roster just doesn't look great in my opinion. Number 35, I have Oregon. Jackson Shellstead will be the guy. He averaged 13 points a game in his freshman year. He'll probably be top 10, maybe top 5-ish sophomore this year, at least in the country. I mean, he's probably going to be first or second team in the Big Ten. I mean, probably second team. Um, they were hoping to bring back N'Faly Dante, but they couldn't. But I mean, they bring back Nathan Biddle, who averaged 10 points a game last year at center. They bring in TJ Bamba. I think Oregon should be a tournament team this year. They were really good last year. They made some noise. They took Creighton to the last second there in that second round game. That was a great game. I think Oregon will come back and make the tournament for the second year in a row. Actually, I don't know if it's the second year in a row, but for at least in back-to-back years. 34, I have Xavier. I'm a little interested to see what happens with Xavier. I mean, last year they finished 16 and 18. They were battling a whole lot of injuries. Very disappointing year. But I feel like this year they're one of the dark horse teams in the Big East. I'm actually pretty high on Xavier. I think they have a really nice bounce back year. I mean, they already lost their starting center for the year. So, I mean, maybe it's just another injury riddled season again, but it's kind of hard to predict that. So I do think Xavier fits in right here at 34. Cincinnati, I have at 33. This is another one of those teams I guess I'm lower on than majority because Cincinnati's actually ranked in the AP poll. I want to wait and see what we get from them. They were the 11th seed in the Big 12 tournament last year. Yes, they bring pretty much everyone back. And yes, I actually am very excited about Cincinnati. I think they should be a tournament team. Um, but the only thing is, there's no, 1A guy in Cincinnati. There's a lot of guys who will contribute. Maybe it's Jizzle James. I don't know. Cincinnati's kind of a question mark for me, so I kind of want to keep it a little bit conservative with this ranking. Number 32, I have Kansas State. Again, kind of similar here to Cincinnati. They bring in a whole lot of transfers. I mean, Coleman Hawkins comes in, which is a huge addition. He's probably going to average close to 18 points a game for them. I do trust Jerome Tang. That's why I'm kind of higher on Kansas State because a lot of people think Cincinnati will be better than Kansas State. A lot of people think Cincinnati could be six seed in the Big 12 when it's all said and done. Maybe even top five. Shock some people. I have them at eight, and we'll get to the team that I have at six because this is 8 and 7 for me in the Big 12. But Kansas State bringing in a whole lot of transfers and freshmen. So again, I kind of want to play it safe with this team, but they could definitely finish higher than this when it's all said and done. Number 31, I have Texas Tech. Uh, I wouldn't be surprised if they drift and kind of, fall off, I guess. I mean, no more Pop Isaacs. That's a huge loss, obviously. But Texas Tech is one of those teams that's always going to be, um, it's always going to be a really good team here. I mean, they bring in Elijah Hawkins and JT Toppin, which is two very good additions. I'm kind of questioning Texas Tech because a lot of people have them high up in the Big 12 in their Big 12 predictions. I wouldn't be surprised if Texas Tech disappoints. I wouldn't be surprised if Texas Tech, uh, over, or I guess, goes above expectations or exceeds expectations as well. Texas Tech kind of has a large range of outcomes, at least for me. Number 30, I have Providence. Providence, again, all over the place with people. Some people have them barely cracking their top 50 teams. Other people have them in their top 25. I have them here at 30. Um, Providence is a team that won 21 games last year without their best player. Um, I know Devin Carter, he was very good for them, but Bryce Hopkins was the guy going into last year, and he did tear his ACL, but he is back. I mean, he averaged 16 points a game 2 years ago. I think Bryce Hopkins is going to be potentially Big East Player of the Year. I don't know if I'd say that, but he definitely has a chance to get that. I think Providence should be a tournament team this year. St. John's, I have at 29. Rick Pitino, I'm not all the way in quite yet. Again, this is kind of one of those teams I want to wait and see what we get. This whole range really, really everyone from this 26 to 40 range, and even going into the top 25 as well. Um, yeah, with St. John's, they just barely missed the tournament last year at a 20-13 record. Um, I think Rick Pitino will be able to win a couple more games, and I think he will be able to get into the tournament this year. I do expect a little bit better of a result in year two. I have Rutgers at 28. Again, kind of need to see what Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey are made of. But that is the number 2 and the number 3 recruit coming into their team. So that is just crazy that they got both of those guys. They bring in Ron Harper Jr.'s brother, or sorry, they don't bring him in. He's back though, so they'll have him there as well. I mean, Ace Bailey's going to be fun to watch. This Rutgers team is going to be very fun. Yeah, Rutgers is a team. Rutgers is a team again that could be top 3 in the Big Ten. I wouldn't be surprised because Dylan Harper, they'll have him run the offense. He, I slipped up. Dylan Harper is the younger brother of Ron Harper Jr., who obviously played at Rutgers as well. And then Ace Bailey is probably even better. This is a team that is going to be very interesting to watch this season. Number 27, I have Michigan. Again, you're kind of seeing the trend where I kind of group up these teams in the same conference. I mean, I grouped up the ACC teams there at 37, 38, 39, the Big 10, 35, 36, the Big 12, 31, 32, 33, the Big East down there, and now we're doing it again with the Big 10. I don't know. I just feel like in this kind of range, it's fair to do that. But with Michigan, they bring in Dusty May. Obviously, that's the huge thing there. And they bring in a whole lot of transfers as well. I actually really do like this Michigan roster. I think they should be back in the tournament. Illinois at 26. I don't really love this Illinois roster. They lose Terrence Shannon, Coleman Hawkins, Marcus Damask, Dane Danger. I mean, they lose pretty much their entire team, but I trust Brad Underwood. I mean, he's got the program in a great spot right now. Over the past 8 seasons, Illinois has finished as a top 25 KenPom team every single year, and uh, 5 of those years they have been top 10. Um, so this Illinois program is in a very good spot, so that's kind of why I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. But when looking at this roster, I am a little bit worried. Obviously, they're not going to be as good as last year, but I am just a little bit concerned. But I do want to give them respect, so I will put them at 26. But roster-wise, they're probably closer to, I don't know. They're not 26. They're lower than that. They're probably still top 40, but again, they lose a whole lot. So this is another one of those teams I kind of want to see play some games before I really buy into them. But moving into our top 25, number 25, I have Ole Miss. You could argue the same thing with Ole Miss. I just trust Chris Beard. I mean, last year he won 20 games. They bring back some pieces from last year that contributed a lot. They bring back Jalen Murray and Matthew Morrell, I think that's how you say his name. Um, Jamarion Sharp. Uh, they left. I mean, Jamarion Sharp left. Alan Flanagan left. I don't know. It's definitely gonna be a question mark. I mean, Ole Miss is a team that beat up on a lot of bad teams non-conference. Then once they got into SEC play, they kind of um, fell off a cliff. Really, I trust Chris Beard. That's kind of what this ranking is. Similar to the Illinois rankings, and a lot of these, and the Michigan State one. I mean, I just trust their coach. They've shown what they can do. 24, I got Wake Forest. When looking at Wake Forest is a team I'm very high on this year. I really wanted to put them higher. Um, Hunter Salas is probably going to be first or second team All American in the country. He averaged 18 points a game last year. Shot 40% from three. I mean, this is, I don't know. Wake Forest could be a team that goes on a run in March Madness. They're a really good team. Like I said, Hunter Salas is going to be top five ish player in the country this year. Number 23, I have Texas. Um, a lot's going to change for Texas. Obviously, they move conferences from the Big 12 to the SEC, but they lose Max Abmas, they lose Dylan Dessou, they lose Tyrese Hunter, they lose Dylan Mitchell. 80% of the team's minutes are gone from last year. Rodney Terry's pretty much got to rebuild the whole team. But they bring in Trey Johnson, who is a very good freshman. They bring back a couple of their role players from last year. I think Texas should still be a tournament team, but they probably take slight step back from where they were at last year. Number 22, I have Florida. I could see Florida. Actually, I'd probably predict that Florida takes steps forward this year. They bring back Walter Clayton Jr., who was a very, very good player last year. They bring back Will Richard. They bring back Alex Condon. They bring in Elijah Martin from FAU. Those are four guys that I really like. Florida is going to be a team that I'm very high on going into this year. I think Florida is in a very good spot to make the tournament, led by Walter Clayton Jr. At number 21, I have Kentucky. With Kentucky, Mark Pope comes in. Obviously, they move on from Coach Cal. And, yeah, it's, again, pretty much a completely new team. With Kentucky, though, I mean, they bring over, Mark Pope brings over his guy from BYU. I believe his name is Jackson Robinson. Something, Jackson something, I believe. But he is a very good player. He led BYU to a 6th seed in March Madness last year. I think in Lexington, he could probably make some noise. Do I think they're going to be a national championship contender that some Kentucky fans would like to hope? No, probably not in year one. Again, he pretty much had to rebuild the roster because once Coach Cal left, pretty much everyone all the incoming players decommitted. It was a whole fiasco. I do still think Kentucky will be a you know a favorable team this year. I think they'll still be a very good team. When looking at our next team here at number 20, I have UCLA. UCLA is kind of another question mark for me. Last year they went 16 and 17, huge letdown year. But I mean, three of their players last season came back. Those three players combined for 37 points a game. So those are three, staples to their team. I think in the Big Ten this year, it's kind of wide open. So I think UCLA is in for a very good season once again. A lot of people think UCLA could finish second in the Big Ten. I'm not as high. I'm not that high on them, but I think with their team, they'll get better this year. They got a lot of guys coming back. I think UCLA will be much improved, especially coming off that disappointing year last year. Number 19, I have Ohio State. Now, you could say I'm a little biased here, but Ohio State's a team I've seen people not have them in their top 40. I've seen people have them in their top 15. Ohio State's a very polarizing team, but the way I look at it, Jake Diebler takes over when Chris Holtmann gets fired on Valentine's Day last year. He takes over. They go 8-3. They beat Purdue, who was ranked number one in the country. They bring back their best player from last year and bring in Michie Johnson, who was the best player on South Carolina, who was a 6 seed last year. They bring back uh, Bruce Thornton, who's arguably a top five-ish player in the Big Ten. They bring in Michie Johnson, who was phenomenal at South Carolina last year. They also bring in a whole lot of other transfers as well. Ohio State's a team that I really like their roster this year. I think Ohio State is going to surprise some people, and I said this in the Big Ten season preview. I think they finished third in the Big Ten this year. The team I have at second is I have one spot ahead of them right now, Indiana. Again, we're grouping up the conference teams, but I think Indiana is safe here at 18. Woodson's job is really on the line here this year. If he doesn't make the tournament, he's probably getting fired. I mean, Mike Woodson entering year four, I don't know. Last year they were pretty bad, very disappointing. I mean, they bring back Malik Reneau, who averaged 15 points a game. They bring back Trey Galloway. They bring back, or sorry, they don't bring in. They bring back all these guys. They bring back Mackenzie Mbaka, who was top 10, I believe. Actually, no, I believe he was the number one recruit like 2 or 3 years ago. So Indiana brings back a lot of guys. I think they will be much improved. I think they will make the tournament because Mike Woodson's going to have to, at least in my estimation. Number 17, I think this is where we get into a new tier of teams here with Marquette. I mean, I just feel like these teams are essentially locked. I mean, because I don't know. I think these teams though, like moving forward, have top four seed in the tournament potential. Um, or I don't want to say potential because I feel like some of these teams behind them do have the potential. You get what I'm saying though. I think this is a tier gap here, starting with Marquette. Obviously, they lose Tyler Kolek, they lose Iguodaro, but they bring back Cam Jones, who is going to be a top five, probably top three-ish player in the Big East, one of the better players in the country. But obviously losing Kolek, huge loss here. But I trust Shaka Smart. I think Marquette will have another great year. Number 16, I have Arkansas. When looking at Arkansas, they obviously Calipari is now the coach. No more Musselman. But they bring over a lot of guys from Kentucky. They bring in a whole lot of recruits, a whole lot of transfers. Arkansas's essentially the new Kentucky. I mean, obviously not, but they are essentially what we saw from Kentucky last year, a young team with a whole lot of guys we have not seen play together. So we'll see with Arkansas. I'm going to keep it a little bit safe here, 2-star. I have got them at 16. Obviously the story, though, DJ Wagner coming on over from Kentucky. 15, I have A&M. This has got to be the A&M year where they actually do something. Last year, everyone thought they would be a top 3 SEC team. Now, they did make the tournament, and I will remind you, they were a 9 seed. They had some pretty bad luck. 21 and 15, got in as a 9 seed. They just narrowly lose to number 1 seed Houston on the road in the second round of the tournament. Their best player comes back, Wade Taylor the fourth, averaged 19 points a game last year. He's got a chance to be the best player in the conference. Now, I hesitated there because, there's a guy over at Alabama we'll get to here soon that is going to be pretty tough to beat, but he does have the chance to do it, in my opinion, at least. And Texas A&M brings back a lot of guys from last year. I think they should. This has got to be the A&M year where they're actually a elite tier team. I got them at 15 here for a reason. But moving on over to our next squad, we got Tennessee. Again, another SEC team. I'm doing a little grouping thing again. But Tennessee, they lose Dalton Knecht. They lose pretty much their whole team. I mean, they lose Vescovy. They lose Jordan James, Toby Awaka, Josiah Jordan James. Um, Tennessee is essentially a whole new team, but this is kind of the same thing I've said with Texas, Illinois. I mean, Kentucky. They're pretty much a whole new team, but I trust Rick Barnes, and I'm giving him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt because Tennessee has been a staple in college basketball for recent years, and I don't expect that to change. I still do think they're going to be a very good team, even with all the question marks. I mean, they still have Zakai Ziegler, so maybe can he step into a bigger role? We will see with them. 13, I have Creighton. So with Creighton, they lose really everyone from last year that was contributing anything except for Ryan Kalkbrenner, who was arguably the best one out of all of them. So I don't know. Creighton's kind of a wild card for me here. I mean, Creighton could be a team that takes a step back because obviously they were a 3 seed in the tournament last year, and it's kind of hard to improve on that. But then again, I mean, Kalkbrenner could win Big East Player of the Year. He is. I mean, they still bring back Mason Miller. They still bring back Stephen Ashworth. So, I mean, yes, they lose Shireman, they lose Trey Alexander. I think the difference here, they bring in Pop Isaacs from Texas Tech, which I think people aren't talking about enough. I think Creighton is probably still going to be a top 3 seed when it's all said and done. Creighton's a really good team. Moving on, though, to our number 12 team, another huge story. I have Purdue at 12, lower than some may think. But they lose Zach Edey. They lose Lance Jones. It is a very different Purdue team. Now, they bring back 3 starters, so that's, I guess, a good sign. Braden Smith is the favorite right now to win Big Ten Player of the Year, and I think for good reason. He showed a whole lot of growth last year. I was hating on him heading into last year, but he really stepped up last year. I believe Trey Kaufman-Renn comes back. He's going to be a very, very important player for them if he can step up and step into a bigger role. They're going to be in a really good spot. I believe Fletcher Lawyer is back as well. So those are some guys they trust over there. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see with Purdue. I don't think they're going to be a national championship contender this year, but I still do think they'll be one of the better teams in the country. Number 11, I have Auburn. They were 4 seed last year, and they bring back essentially everyone. Janai Broome comes back. People are saying he could argue. I mean, Mark Sears is obviously the clear favorite for SEC Player of the Year for good reason, but people are saying Janai Broome could potentially steal it from him. Janai Broome averaged 16.5 points a game, 8.5 rebounds, 2 assists and 2 blocks, and 55% from the field. When looking at Auburn, they finished 4th overall in KenPom last year. Uh, yes, they were a 4 seed. Yes, they lost first round. But Bruce Pearl brings back pretty much the majority of everyone that's important from this year. Chad Baker Mazara, Denver Jones. I think Auburn, people are kind of sleeping on Auburn. I don't know. I feel like Auburn is gonna impress some people and be better than some expect. I wouldn't be surprised if Auburn is a top 2 seed in March Madness come Selection Sunday. But we're getting into the big dog territory, moving in to our top 10 teams, and I would argue that this is another tier gap. You know, it's a little cliche, the top 10, but I do think the top 10 are kind of in a tier of their own right now. And honestly, this year for college basketball is kind of wide open. There's a lot of good teams. Starting off with number 10, I have Baylor. And you could argue they should be higher. I wouldn't put it past you. Um, they lose Jacoby Walker, but they bring in VJ Edgecombe, who is arguably going to be a another lottery pick and probably only there for 1 year. Um, I think with Jeremy Roach coming in, with Norchad Omier coming in, Baylor's going to be once again an elite team in college basketball. I trust Scott Drew. Yes, he lost a lot, but he returns a lot of it. He really, made up for it in the transfer portal. So I like Baylor here at 10. Number 9, I have Arizona. You could argue these two should be flip-flopped. I wouldn't put it past you. I mean, these two teams are about as close as you can get, in my opinion. Um, Arizona in the AP poll is ranked 10th, but crazy as it is to say, they're actually 5th in terms of Big 12 teams. That just goes to show how good the Big 12 is, and they're always the best conference. I think with Caleb Love coming back in for Arizona, KJ Lewis, Jaden Bradley, they bring in Trey Townsend from Oakland, who helped them with their Cinderella run. I think Tommy Lloyd and Arizona are going to be once again a top 10 team. Caleb Love could arguably win Big 12 Player of the Year. He is that good. He's reigning Pac 12 Player of the Year. Um, I think Arizona's in for another great season here. Number 8, I have Gonzaga. Now, honestly, I'm a little bit less knowledgeable about Gonzaga this year than I have been for a lot of these other teams because I really haven't looked at a lot of their team. I know they bring back Graham Ike, which is honestly good enough for them to be top 25 in the country, as crazy as that is. Graham Ike is that good. He averaged 18 and a half points a game last year. Um, so that's obviously, a huge, get back. They bring back Ryan Nemhard, who was who could potentially make an All-American team this year. I wouldn't be surprised. Um, Gonzaga has 81% of its minutes back from last year, which is the 7th most in the country. Gonzaga was a really good team last year. I think they're only going to get better. They made the Sweet 16 last year, so they were a 5 seed. They bring back pretty much their entire team, everyone that was important. Um, the only other two teams that are even close to their minutes coming back are Houston and Marquette, so they should easily be a top 15 team at the bare minimum this year. Number 7, I have Iowa State. This is another one of those teams that brings back a whole lot of their guys from last year. And may I remind you, Iowa State won the Big 12 last year, the best conference in the country. Iowa State was a 2 seed last year. They had the number 1 defense in KenPom. They were easily a top 10 team last year. And they made the Sweet 16 in March Madness. Now, obviously, they lost to Illinois and they wanted to go farther. But Iowa State bringing back Tamin Lipsey, bringing back Keyshawn Gilbert. I mean, this is a really good team. They not only do they bring a lot of guys back, but they bring in guys as well. I think Iowa State could arguably be better than they were last year. So I'm higher on Iowa State than most. I feel like I mean you look at this team; they were the number one defense last year, and they bring back uh, their three best players. So I don't know. I think Iowa State's people are sleeping on them a little bit. They're not giving them enough credit coming off of last year. I think Iowa State's probably. I mean, really, all these teams are probably a lock for the tournament. Number six, I have Duke. Duke's a team that could be the number one team in the country by the end of the year. Duke's a team that could be a six seed going into March. I mean, we really don't know with Duke. Obviously, the story here, Cooper Flagg coming in the number one recruit in the country this year. He's pretty much the consensus number one NBA draft pick for next year. Uh, but they bring back Tyrese Proctor. They bring back Caleb Foster, Mason Gillis. Um, comes in from Purdue. I think there's enough experience on this team to expect them to be one of the best teams in the country. And if these freshman guys, I mean, obviously Cooper Flagg, I think he'll be very good. But if the other freshmen are as good as some people say, Duke is going to be top three team in the country this year. I have them at six right now, but you can make an argument they should be way higher. At five, I have UNC. Now, people gave me some, slack for this in the ACC tournament prediction, but I just trust North Carolina right now. Yes, they lose Armando Bacot. Um, yes, they lose Harrison Ingram. Yes, they lose Cormac Ryan. But last year they were a one seed, and they bring back their best player in R.J. Davis, who averaged 21 points a game last year. Um, they bring back Elliot Cadu, I believe it's how you say his name, but last year he was very good for North Carolina. They bring in some big men transfers. Um, they bring in some freshmen. Ian Jackson was the number 8 recruit this year. I think Drake Powell was the number 11 recruit. So they have a lot of freshmen coming in. They have the experience as well. I think they have a really good mix to to be top 10 team, at least as of right now. Number 4, I have UConn. Now you could argue they should be number 1, and I wouldn't put it past you. If we're being honest, though, you look at this roster. This is not the fourth best team. This is probably not even a top 10 roster in the country. Now, am I saying UConn's not a top 10 team? No. Obviously, you got to give them respect to the back-to-back defending champions looking for a three-peat this year. But they lose really, I mean, just a whole lot from last year. The best player coming back is Alex Caravan, who is probably the fourth or fifth best player on the team last year. He's going to have a lot of guys that are going to need to step up. They lose Tristan Newton, they lose Klingon, they lose Cam Spencer, they lose Stephon Castle. Hassan Diarra is going to be stepping into a bigger role. Obviously, Aiden Mahaney comes in from St. Mary's, so that will be a really good addition for them. I think they really needed that pickup there. Jalen Stewart is a guy to keep your eyes on. I don't know. I mean, you got to give them credit. They are the back-to-back champs, but UConn, do they get the 3 this year? I don't know. Their teams, at least on right now, there's a real chance that we're going into Selection Sunday and UConn's the number 1 team because Dan Hurley is that good as a coach. But right now, I don't know. 4 I think is fair. And you could argue they should be higher. You could also argue based on the roster they should be lower. So 4 I think is fair though for right now. Obviously these rankings will change week to week. Number 3 I have Houston. I think you could argue they should be 1. Houston is one of the best teams in the country. I mean, I wouldn't be mad if you said Houston should be number 1. I wouldn't be mad if you said Houston should be, I mean, actually no. Houston's definitely a top 3 team at worst. I mean, you look at Houston. Yes, they lose Jamal Shed, but they bring back Emmanuel Sharp. They bring back LJ Cryer. They bring back Jawan Roberts. This is going to be one of the best defenses once again in the country. But I think as of right now, the highest I can put them is 3. Now, I don't like this. Houston was the second overall 1 seed last year, and they are returning, besides Jamal Shed, pretty much everyone who got minutes last year. So Houston is definitely going to be an elite team once again. Number 2, I have Alabama. This is one of those teams that you could argue should be 1, and I wouldn't have expected this. But last year, going into March Madness, Mark Sears just led them on a incredible run as a 4 seed. They made it all the way to the Final Four and lost at the hands of the almighty UConn Huskies. But Mark Sears is projected. He is the preseason National Player of the Year. They had the number 2 ranked offense in KenPom last year, and I think when looking at this team, they probably have one of the best, if not the best, offenses once again. They bring in 2 other fifth-year guys, Grant Nelson, who averaged 12 points a game. He was huge for them in their run. Latrell Wrightsell Jr. averaged 9 points a game. They bring in some guys from the transfer portal, from a lot of mid-majors, but they all averaged above 10 points a game. I think with Nate Oates, this team is going to be an elite team, and arguably you could argue. I've seen some people saying Bama should be 1. I wouldn't put it past you. They definitely are top. They're definitely 3 at lowest. I think these top 3 are kind of set in stone as of right now, at least for me. Now you could argue UConn. Actually, I'll say the top 4 are kind of set in stone. You could kind of put them in any order. Number 1 though, I have Kansas. I don't love this. I had Kansas number 1 last year, and we all know what happened. Kansas was a team that I was very low on going to March Madness. I thought they would lose first round. That didn't happen, but they did lose second round. Hunter Dickinson comes back, though. KJ Adams comes back. DeJuan Harris comes back. I mean, that is the best big 3 in college basketball. I know we saw it last year, but they were injured for a lot of last year. I mean, Kansas was the consensus number 1 team in the country last year, and there's a reason they're number 1 in the AP poll again, because not only do they have those 3 guys, but they bring in A.J. Storr from Wisconsin, who led that Wisconsin team to a 5 seed, and I believe either a Big Ten championship or a Big Ten runner-up. It might have been a runner-up, because I know they played Illinois. So they were either first or second in the Big Ten, and A.J. Storr was the guy there. They also bring in Zeke Mayo from South Dakota State. People aren't talking about that. So not only do they have the best Big 3 in the country, but they bring in A.J. Storr, Rylan Griffin from Alabama as well, and Zeke Mayo. Those guys can all score. Those guys can all shoot. Kansas is probably going to be top 3 offense at worst this year. Their offense is going to be ridiculous. How will the defense fare? Because Hunter Dickinson isn't known for his defense. We'll see. But I think Bill Self is still second best coach in the country, only behind Dan Hurley. I think Kansas is going to have a very nice bounce back year, and I think they will be an elite team once again. But that's going to do it for the Week 1 College Basketball Power 40 rankings. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, make sure you go down there, leave a like on the video. Apologize if this is a little bit longer, but I'm very excited about college basketball coming back. Make sure you enjoy the games today. There's some good ones. Texas, Ohio State, Baylor, Gonzaga, top 10 matchup, day 1. It's kind of unheard of. Enjoy those games. Make sure you comment down below what you disagree, what you agree. Just let me know what you think. Love to debate down there. As always, subscribe. Mondays, college basketball. Tuesday, college football. Wednesday, NFL. Thursday, NBA. We also do MLB. So if any of that interests you, subscribe. Links in the description, as always. X, Twitch, TikTok, Discord. Make sure you follow those, join those. With all that being said, though, hope you enjoyed. See you tomorrow with our college football top 25 rankings.